Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Well, what goes up must come down, so in this video I wanted to talk about my top 10 least favorite movies of 2024. If you haven't seen my top 10 favorite movies, go ahead and check out that video. But unlike good movies, the bad ones this year were not very difficult to find. In fact, my hatred for a lot of the movies this year extends well past 10, but I've done my best to cultivate some of the lousiest movies of the year for you guys. Now once again, my list may look wildly different than your lists, but objectively, I really hated these movies. But there was a genre that did famously bad this year as opposed to previous years, so I've created a section called Superhero Hell. I'm not going to talk much about them, but man did the quality dip. We had Joker 2, which hilariously decided to be a musical and destroy its fan base and give a middle finger to everyone who wanted to enjoy it. We had Venom 3, which was an absolutely depressing final installment in the trilogy for Venom. He deserved so much better. And we had Kraven the Hunter. And my comments on that one is that the only thing I was craving after that movie was a car accident. And I know, there's others besides those, but just hang on. Without further ado, let's dive into my 10 least favorite movies of the year. At number 10 was my first movie of 2024. It was punny, it was full of honey. Number 10 is The Beekeeper. I like Jason Statham action flicks just as much as the next guy, but this one was so stupid. And then all of the stupid bee puns. You know, beekeeper, they protect the hive. They don't let any invading creatures come in. It's like, please just drown me in a bathtub. And the funny part was that the more the movie continued, the more annoyed I got with it. And so I just started slowly losing my sanity throughout. It was a heck of a way to kick off the year, and it made me a little depressed about what was going to happen next. At number 9 is a movie that came later in the year. And this one's going to be a bit controversial because I've seen it in some people's top 10 favorite films of the year. And it's also controversial to me because one of my favorite actresses is in it. That movie is Heretic. Everything that I hoped this movie was going to be, it wasn't. Really, what this movie was Mr. Reed, played by Hugh Grant, trapping them in a single room and proceeding to monologue at you for almost 2 hours. It was absolutely painful to sit through, and you just kept hoping that something would get better, that something would happen, and it didn't. I know some people think that this movie was the bee's knees. Curse you, Jason Statham. But it did absolutely nothing for me. At number 8, we have a movie that nobody really wanted, but actually had a decent cast of some of the most random people that you could pair together. This franchise has a pretty solid following, so there was going to be some skepticism to say the least, but then it did its best Patrick Mahomes impression and flopped extremely hard. That movie is Borderlands. Chock full of one of the worst scripts of the year and absolutely brain rot nonsense. Borderlands pissed off its fans and casual viewers alike because of how horrible it was. I mean, there was so many things wrong with this movie, and sadly, underneath all of it, there actually was a story that would have been pretty cool. But this movie was nowhere close to finding it. Finding its way to number 7 is a movie that I don't think a lot of people watched. It came out in theaters, so I decided to go watch it. And it had a few decent actors and actresses in it, so I thought, why not? Maybe it'll be a diamond in the rough. Well, it was all rough there, and that movie is The Killer's Game. It actually started decent enough for an extremely cheesy movie, and it had some interesting elements, some kind of John Wick-y vibes to it. And then after 15 minutes, it just decided to jump off the deep end, and there was no water to catch it. If these are the roles that Dave Bautista said he wanted to try out and not get typecast and stuff like Guardians of the Galaxy anymore, I think he should go back to form because this was bad. Now, at number 6, I had no idea what this movie was going to be about coming into it, so props to the trailers for not giving that away. But also, I hate you because I witnessed some of the most disturbing stuff I've seen this year. The movie that made me want to close my eyes and not open them is Blink Twice. There are some concepts that could be interesting and you can find a way to spin them to make it work. And there are some concepts that you should just not ever make a movie about. And this is one of those. This was Zoe Kravitz's directorial debut, and she roped in Channing Tatum to play a really disturbing character. And I guess she got what she wanted, but nobody else did. Now, before we go into the top 5, I have a section called All Concept, No Delivery. The 3 movies on this list had extremely interesting and intriguing concepts, but when it came down to trying to find a way to show it on screen and execute it well, they just couldn't figure it out. The first movie on this list is Book of Clarence. The concept of this movie was hilarious. The visuals were interesting for certain parts, and it could have been awesome, But man alive, was it an absolute snooze fest. So much of it didn't make sense, and it was an absolute mess after the first 10 minutes. There's a lot of good actors in that movie too, but they couldn't execute. The next one there has one of my favorite actors of all time in it, Michael Keaton. That movie is Knox Goes Away. Now the concept of this movie is brilliant. Knox is a contract killer that gets some form of dementia and starts forgetting things about what's going on. And so he starts forgetting things, and the audience starts not seeing certain things because of his memory loss. And so what the audience thinks is going on is Knox's understanding of what's going on, which is not what's actually happening. Like, that is really, really interesting and a really solid plot, but it just couldn't deliver on it. And at the top of this list is a movie I really, really wanted to enjoy, and that movie is Boy Kills World. I loved so many things about this movie, but man alive, the absolute horrible failure in it was the script. It made the movie absolutely miserable to watch. It was extremely annoying and was pure brain rot. That's the only way that I know how to describe it. You have talented actors and actresses in here. You have really interesting characters. The visuals were amazing, and the idea behind the movie was awesome, including an amazing twist at the end. But the entire script was a pile of poop. And so that's how it finds itself at the top of all concept and no delivery. That one really hurt for me. Now on to number 5. I really wanted to see this movie because Nicolas Cage was in it, and because it set itself up as this really creepy, murdery movie. But it ended up being very dark, twisted, and demonic. And that movie is Longlegs. There were a couple really interesting things about the movie, and it forgot about those after the first 15 minutes and never revisited them, and instead decided to take the easy and lazy narrative of making it a demon movie. I'm surprised I didn't walk out of it because I don't like watching those movies anymore, but it was a really late reveal, like last 3/4 of the film, and that's why it's on this list. On to number 4. This movie was bad, like laughably bad, and I watched the original before I went to go see it just because I needed to. And holy downgrade, brother. Number 4 is The Crow. Like, when you ask actors and actresses to be a part of a movie, they have to have some kind of acting ability, right? Well, apparently not for this movie. Not only was the storytelling in this movie an absolute mess, but FKA Twigs delivered one of the most unconvincing acting performances of the year. It also decided to forget most of the interesting things about the original movie and the character of The Crow, and try its new thing, and its new thing was a bunch of empty romantic phrases, and by romantic I mean full of sex, drugs, and alcohol. Just a horrible film that forgot what a revenge flick should be. Coming in at number 3 is a superhero movie that missed the first list because it deserved to be here, and that movie is Madame Web. I had a lot of hope for this movie, but paired with deceptive advertising and horrible writing, Madame Web was one of the worst movies I have ever seen. Nobody wanted to be there, and most all of the actresses are making fun of it now, but this movie told us it was going to show us superwomen in spider suits, and it did. For 5 seconds. The whole rest of the movie was just them arguing and chasing each other around this indecipherable story while one of the weakest villains ever tries to hunt them down and gets hit by a car 5 times. Laughably bad, but not funny enough to watch again. Madame Web, you suck. Before we talk about the final 2 movies on this list, I want to talk about a film that in my opinion was the biggest bust of the year. And I'm not talking box office. I'm saying I was looking forward to this movie. I was super excited to see it. It had so much promise to it, and then for me it absolutely flopped. So for me, 2024's biggest bust was Gladiator 2. Now I know some people liked this movie, some people thought it was entertaining. I thought it was an absolute shadow of the first movie, and I was horribly unimpressed by Ridley Scott's attempt at trying to make a useless, empty sequel. There were so many things that he could have done to make it an original and awesome sequel to the original, but holy for holies, it was horrible. Coming in number 2 is a movie that looked awesome. In fact, if you watch my review for it, I thought it was going to be like Christopher Nolan level film, and it ended up being a big, incoherent mess. That movie is Megalopolis. Cast loaded. Idea interesting. Modern day Rome with Adam Driver at the helm. But it was so confusing and horribly boring. There was no rhyme or reason to the film, not that the naked eye could see. In fact, the only thing your eyes could see was all of these impressive visuals that literally meant nothing. And that's the best way to describe that movie, is a big, beautiful nothing. Megalopolis was a mega pile of crap. And coming in at the number 1 slot, my least favorite movie of the year. What I saw with the reviews for this one is that people believe that there's going to be a cult following in a few years, but in my opinion, I say let the undead die. My least favorite movie in 2024 was Lisa Frankenstein. That may make people go up in arms, people may be angry, I don't care. That movie was horrible. It was an absolute mess of a film about a girl who was trying to resurrect a dead person just so that she could lose her virginity to him. And once again, we arrive at a point where I don't know why some movies get made. It was horribly unfunny. It was a giant incoherent mess. Literally one scene had nothing to do with the previous scene. It was confusing, it was dull, and I was the only person in the movie theater watching it. And honestly, that's probably the way it should have been. Lisa Frankenstein was an insult to good movies and good movie making, and I hope that it's lost in time and not resurrected ever. Well, there you have it. Those are my least favorite movies of 2024. Now I know we had a lot to choose from. It was a bad year for movies. But with that being said, please let me know in the comments below what your least favorite movies of 2024 were and why. And let's collectively hope that moving forward into 2025, we get some better quality, fun movies. As always, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate all your love and support, and I'll catch you guys and gals in the next one.